What's going on, everyone? It's Adrian from Draft Time. Today is October 24th, and we have an 8-game slate for the NBA starting at 7 p.m. So let's go ahead and get right into our DFS picks and strategies for the NBA slate tonight for FanDuel and DraftKings. So first off, as far as injuries are concerned, you want to look out for the injury to Scotty Barnes. Right now, he's listed as questionable. Probably not going to play the game. I mean, he looked pretty banged up last game against the Heat. He didn't finish that game. Chris Boucher actually has been cleared to play, though, so he might actually play for the Raptors. And if Barnes ends up missing the game, he might have some value there at $4,200. But if Scotty Barnes does miss the game, you also want to look out for guys like Precious Achiuwa, OG Anunoby. Siakam's He's been balling out, even whether Barnes plays or not. He's been having a pretty good season so far. Another guy that's questionable, probably not going to play either, is Dillon Brooks. He's missed the past few games, and he's probably going to miss this game. But for the most part, most of those Memphis players' salaries have already been adjusted since he missed the last few games. So not going to be much value there if he does miss the game. Now, speaking of value, let's go ahead and go right into the top value picks for FanDuel. So let's go ahead and let's sort this right here by value. And the top value pick, that's going to be Kelly Olynyk. He's $4,800. We have him projected to score 32.8. Now, if you look at his last two games, he had 40.1 and 33.1. So he's on a pretty good streak right now. He's going up against Houston, which is one of the worst defenses in the league. He's going to be pretty heavily owned coming off those two big games, but he's definitely going to be worth it. Now, another big value pick is going to be Santi Aldama, $4,400, and we're projecting him to score 25.53. And if you look at his game log, he actually he's off to a pretty good start this season, 38, 34. And last game, he only scored 13, but he was in foul trouble all game. So he's a pretty efficient player when he does play, and he's probably going to end up playing pretty big minutes against Brooklyn. So that's another pretty good value play. Now let's go ahead and go to DraftKings, and let's look at the DraftKings value plays. And pretty much the same thing. Yeah, Kelly Olynyk, he's $5,200 on DraftKings. Usman Garuba for Houston, he's only $3,500, and he's been getting the start, probably going to get the start again tonight. He played 26 minutes last game. Definitely worth it on DraftKings at $3,500. That's a pretty big value. That's pretty big value there. But another guy I want to point out on DraftKings is Bam Adebayo. He's only $7,000. I haven't seen Bam Adebayo that cheap in a while. He's going up against the Raptors, who are pretty small, going to be even smaller if Scotty Barnes ends up missing the game. And he's not really having a good start so far this season. I wouldn't be surprised if the Heat actually made an effort to give him the ball a lot more and to get him going early on. So definitely value there at $7,000. As far as the top studs, let's go back to FanDuel. You got a lot of studs on the slate. Joel Embiid, Jokic, James Harden, Kevin Durant, Ja Morant, Jason Tatum. There's really not a whole lot of value here with the studs besides Joel Embiid. Now, Joel Embiid is going up against the Pacers tonight, and the Pacers have no Miles Turner, and they actually they have the 7th worst defense against opposing centers, and they haven't gone up against someone like Joel yet. So Joel should have a pretty good game against the Pacers. And when you compare him to someone like Jokic, they're right around the same projection, 55.5, 54.4 for Jokic, but Jokic is almost $1,000 more expensive. And Jokic is still priced for last season. You know, last season he was in the 11,000s and he was incredibly productive, put up huge numbers. But I expect his numbers to take a dip this season with Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. both back. So I definitely like Joel as my top stud. Now, if you look at someone like James Harden, if you compare his price now, he's $10,000 now. He's having a pretty good season so far. But compare that to opening night. I think opening night he was like $8,700. So all these guys' prices have all been adjusted upwards, and they're all pretty expensive. So really on FanDuel, the only stud I like is Joel Embiid. Now let's go ahead and go to DraftKings. Pretty much the same studs, but James Harden is actually significantly cheaper on DraftKings, $9,000, 49.5% projected ownership. So he's going to be pretty heavily owned, but that's because he's so cheap there on DraftKings. Now let's go ahead and let's go back to FanDuel and let's take a look at ownership. You got the top owned guys. It's going to be Joel Embiid, Kelly Olynyk, Jalen Green, Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons, if you take a look at him, he had a bad opening night, but he was in foul trouble a lot. But he played 33 minutes last game. He scored 33 fantasy points. So he does look like he's back on track. And $6,400 for someone like Ben Simmons, that's a pretty good price. So these are going to be the top owned guys. But I want to go down and try to find a sleeper here and someone I want to actually talk about. And that's going to be Al Horford. He's $5,600. We have him projected to be 2.26% owned and to score 26.7 fantasy points. Now, he's not exactly, dirt cheap, but he does have the potential to score 40 plus. He's getting big minutes. That's one thing I want to note. If you take a look at his game log, he played 34 minutes last game against the Heat, but he only scored 13.5 fantasy points. And in the first game against Philly, he only played 23 minutes, but he was in foul trouble for a lot of the game, guarding Joel Embiid. Now, tonight he's going to have to go against Nikola Vucevic, so they're going to need his size and his defense. So I'm expecting him to play pretty big minutes again in the mid-30s. So he does have this potential to score in the mid-30s and even in the 40-point range. He just hasn't been productive so far this season. Now, I can't guarantee that he's going to score that much. We have him projected to score 26.7, but what I can assure you is that he's going to play big minutes. Now let's go ahead and look at some of the ownership on DraftKings. So let's go ahead and sort this by ownership. And right away you see James Harden. He was that guy I was talking about earlier. Pretty good value, $9,000. When you get someone who's one of the top value plays on the slate, and he's also one of the top overall projections on the slate, usually they're pretty heavily owned. You got Kelly Olynyk, who's a pretty good value play like I was talking about. Usman Garuba, Joel Embiid is going to end up in a bunch of lineups. Jalen Green's going to end up in a ton. Jokic, Tyrese Maxey. But as far as sleepers go, I think that Al Horford is another strong sleeper play on DraftKings. Has double-double potential. Is only $5,400. Only 0.97% ownership projection. So not even 1% ownership projection. Now, with all that being said, let's go ahead and let's run the top lineups for DraftKings. So let's come over here and hit generate lineups, and let's see what it spits out. Okay, you got James Harden, Jalen Green, Devin Vassell, Lauri Markkanen, Bam Adebayo, Trey Jones, Josh Hart, and Kelly Olynyk. Now let's go ahead and let's go to FanDuel and let's run the top lineups for FanDuel, see what it spits out. So for FanDuel, you got Ben Simmons, Kevin Porter, RJ Barrett, Jalen Green, Jimmy Butler, Franz Wagner, Kelly Olynyk, Santi Aldama, and Joel Embiid. So anyways, let me know what you guys think. If you're interested in using these tools, be sure to sign up for drafttime.com. You can sign up for a free 7-day trial. Right now we got NFL, English Premier League soccer, PGA, MLB, and the NBA all going on all at the same time. So now's the time to sign up.